When you look at the historical record of the 20th century, you eventually have to confront a difficult question. Are we looking at a genuine recipient of supernatural gifts, or the most successful, naturally explainable religious phenomenon in modern history? Francesco Forgione lived from 1887 to 1968. He began his life as exactly the kind of person history usually forgets, a rural southern Italian who joined the Capuchin order, trading his name for a habit and blending into a long line of identical friars. But he didn't stay anonymous. Under the name Padre Pio, he became one of the most polarizing and heavily documented figures of his era. To understand how this happened, we have to trace his isolation. He was sent away from his hometown to the remote, rocky terrain of the Monte Gargano Peninsula. He was placed in a small, isolated friary in San Giovanni Rotondo, and it was inside this exact location that a 50-year phenomenon took place. But he wasn't operating in a vacuum. A few hours to the northwest sat the Vatican, the institutional counterbalance responsible for evaluating and often suppressing claims of the miraculous. This 50-year record includes 2 Vatican-certified healings and over 1,000 contested claims, ranging from medical anomalies to single-witness devotional folklore. These events triggered a collision between 2 opposing forces. On the ground, you had intense, overwhelming popular devotion. Above him, you had highly hostile, skeptical scrutiny from his own institution. To evaluate his life accurately, we have to pierce through the noise. We must look past hagiography that accepts every legend, as well as the reflexive skepticism that dismisses physical anomalies without analyzing the data. The institutional resistance he faced was severe. The Holy Office, the Vatican's doctrinal watchdog, sanctioned Pio 3 separate times during his life, restricting his public ministry and questioning his credibility. This skepticism reached the highest levels of the Church. Pope John XXIII, reviewing reports of the phenomena in his private diary, referred to the devotion around Pio as a straw idol. Yet that historical Vatican skepticism failed to halt the momentum on the ground. This is the physical footprint of San Giovanni Rotondo today. Millions of people travel here. Their faith is anchored to the specific physical claims that Padre Pio's life was a point of supernatural intercession. This creates a difficult problem for the historian. Most people treat Pio as an all-or-nothing proposition, believing either that every legend is factual or that the discovery of a single fabrication dissolves the entire 50-year record. An evidentiary landscape this uneven requires a formal probabilistic framework to distinguish between legendary accretion and genuine anomaly. We start by categorizing the record into testable datasets: the stigmata, bilocations, healings, soul reading, and posthumous miracles. To evaluate these claims, we will use Bayesian probability. This bar represents our sorting condition, known in Bayesian analysis as the prior. It measures 2 competing hypotheses: natural causation on the left and supernatural causation on the right. We treat natural and supernatural causes as exactly equiprobable a priori. We give neither side an initial advantage. To move that slider, the evidence must pass through epistemic filters. These filters determine the statistical weight of the historical records. Filter 1 is documentation quality. Contemporaneous written records generated at the time of the event are weighted far above memoirs written decades later.
Filter 2 is witness orientation. Evidence from a hostile investigator, such as a skeptical medical examiner, carries significant statistical weight if it corroborates a phenomenon. Applying these rigid filters translates messy historical anecdotes into a calculated evaluation of the evidence. When evidence passes through these filters, it pushes our 50-50 baseline in one direction or the other. This updated probability is the posterior. Claims that rely on a single witness or show patterns of legendary accretion generally regress toward the prior. The evidence simply isn't strong enough to move the needle. Take the World War II flying monk incident. Pilgrims claim General Nathan F. Twining saw a monk in the sky over San Giovanni Rotondo, preventing his bombers from dropping their payload. When we process this claim, it fades. General Twining's memoirs never mention it, and official military archives show no mission records over the town. Because the natural explanation, a wartime consolation legend, accounts for the data more cleanly, the probability drops. Conversely, phenomena backed by deep paper trails and high-status corroboration will move the posterior in the other direction. In 1962, a psychiatrist named Wanda Poltavska was diagnosed with a suspected malignant tumor. Bishop Karl Wojtyla wrote to Padre Pio asking for his prayers. 11 days later, Wojtyla wrote a second letter, stating the tumor had disappeared just before surgery. Because we have the surviving physical letters confirming a tight timeline, the statistical needle pushes above the baseline. Using this microscope reveals that Pio's legacy is not one single story, but an uneven landscape of dissolved legends and stubborn, documented anomalies. But the investigation is not about any single isolated incident. We are evaluating the whole picture. To do that, we use the concept of conjunctive improbability.
This matrix shows the individual posterior scores of 11 distinct claims. In a Bayesian model, these independent scores interact and multiply together. This matrix tests the limits of the naturalistic hypothesis. To maintain that every event was purely natural, one must find an independent terrestrial explanation for every anomaly in the set, with no failures in the chain across 50 years. We are testing whether the sheer density of documented anomalies demands a supernatural synthesis. Returning to the physical reality of San Giovanni Rotondo today, we can now view this hospital and shrine complex through a scientific lens. To separate the noise from the signal, we have organized the investigation into 3 arenas. Arena 1 covers the contested lifetime phenomena, the reports of soul reading in the confessional, prophetic statements, and early physical healings. Arena 2 focuses on the medical anomalies of the stigmata. We will analyze the pathology reports and the biological question of maintaining open wounds for 50 years without infection. Arena 3 examines the posthumous healings, the specific cases that survived the scrutiny of the Vatican's medical boards to achieve canonization. As we enter these arenas, our commitment to epistemic neutrality remains absolute. This investigation will process the archival records as they are, whether they suggest genuine medical impossibilities or reveal mythopoeic legend and fraud. Analytical. The framework is set. The baseline is at 0. Over the next 3 episodes, we will examine each claim on its own evidence, then ask what the totality tells us.